simulation where unknown forces strike the edge of ecology.
And we mentioned aliens, revelations and disclosures. Of course, Todd is one of those people who has found there are other ways to do this. There are other levels of reality that perhaps we can all reach. And I always love hearing Todd speak, and I'm really excited to hear what he's got to share with us this evening. So, astral projection, remote viewing, and more. We are literally going to hack the hologram. So I'd like to give you a big welcome. Please, Todd, back in your seat. Howdy.
Howdy.
I'm a bit on the nervous side. I haven't done this in a couple of years now, it seems. When was class rate? It was 2 years ago? Or
Last year.
Oh, it was only a year ago. So I'm a little bit out of practice, but Andy seems to bring me out of mothballs every now and then. So, but it's good because it kind of leaves time in between for me to get up to other stuff on other dimensions and then report back what I experienced. And that's what I'm going to do tonight. Because I think we've all experienced it one way or another throughout our lives. We have these experiences, little glitches in the makeup, in the matrix. We wake, at nights with maybe a false awakening. I'm going to ask you for audience participation at some point. So I'll ask you, who's had a false awakening? This is where let's say as an example, your alarm goes off. So you get up out of bed, you start walking around, you start doing mundane stuff, the routine stuff, and then something you notice is out of the ordinary. Maybe the wallpaper is a different color than what it should be, and it's a dead giveaway. Wait a second, that's not my wallpaper. I must be dreaming. And then you wake up for real, because that usually wakes people back up. So that's a false awakening. So we have things like that happen. So we're going to talk a lot about that kind of stuff. I'm going to share experiences which will hopefully make you think, wow, I know people that have had stuff like that, or I've experienced something like that. It makes you feel more normal, more weird, whatever you want to feel because of it. I'll leave that to you. But I want to start this off with something that's really close to my heart. And a few of you have probably done with me. It's my synchronicity walks. Because they also give you an angle on these other realities. I think synchronicity is one of these things that binds us, connects us across these other dimensions of reality. So one of the things I love doing, and I do a lot of this in London, is I'll put up signs, notices throughout London, bookshops, with just a little message. Show up at this time, at this place, on this day, and let synchronicity be your guide. By curiosity, anybody here that's done one of these walks with me? There's enough for you. So, and I say things like, let your intuition be your guide, and magic around every corner. Meetings with, timely meetings with strangers. So people show up on the night, and there's a lot of uncertainty, in the people who are turning up, because they don't know who, most of them probably don't know me, and they're meeting me for the first time, and somebody might ask, so what's the plan? And then I reach in my pocket and I get out these red Las Vegas dice and I say, we follow the dice. So we roll the dice, and the dice decides which direction to go. So we're taking all control out of our hands. And obviously in this world where we're already feeling very out of control, that can really push people's buttons throughout the night. Because they have to trust once they get in that flow, and they have to trust that the universe has got their back. There's this 6'5" man, who's got these dice. I don't know where he's going to take us. I don't know where it's going to go. So people show up and they ask that, and I say, okay, well, we follow the dice. Every time we come to a street corner where there's one direction to go, we roll the dice, and the dice decide, and we go that direction. On one of the dice faces, it says, "Follow the white rabbit." And that basically means that we choose somebody from random, just a stranger walking by. Not somebody that just, as soon as we roll over, oh, we'll take that. Somebody that stands out. Somebody that's like a walking portal. They're going to take you somewhere unusual. Or they're just unusual. There's something different about them. So once we locate that individual, we then roll the dice again to get how many minutes we follow them. It could be, let's say we roll a 2. So for 2 minutes, we have to follow them, no matter where they go. And it's usually on these walks 15, 20, sometimes 30 people. So, yeah. But the point is, you're not supposed to let the rabbit know that you're following them. That's kind of difficult when suddenly they walk into an elevator, and you have to walk it with them. And under awkward situations like that, I always make sure to instruct my group, and if we go into places like elevators with them, face them. 30 people get in an elevator and they're facing them. I don't know tell them to do that. But, they wind up doing that anyway. So, we get really amazing things happen on these walks. And one that I'll just recount to you before I get into the deeper levels of reality. It was just one of those nights where everything was, you didn't have to orchestrate anything. It's this grand tapestry is just already there, and you just have to trust your inner guidance. So we rolled the dice. I can't remember on this night what our group number was, but we have like a group number. And whenever that number appears in our environments, we follow it. So let's say, for example, we roll the number 2, and immediately somebody walks by with a football jersey on with the number 22. Obviously, we're going to follow them. That just makes a lot of sense. And we follow them for a few minutes. And what's happening here is, again, we're taking this out of our control. And we're just getting into this flow. And let's say after 2 minutes, we say goodbye to him, and there's a building number that's number 2, or something like that. Then we'll head over towards that building, and we just keep this going the whole night. So on this one occasion, we wind up in Soho. We're in London, we wind up in Soho. And we had this yellow theme developing throughout the night. Yellow just kept appearing. And we're here with this guy that we come across that has this big umbrella, and he's holding it, and it's yellow, and it says free healing. All you have to do is walk under the umbrella, and he would do some healing work, like Reiki with you, and it was fabulous. So we all sort of crowded underneath his umbrella, which was lovely, and he enjoyed that. And then we stepped back, we thanked him, and we rolled the dice. Again, just to keep moving. So we rolled the dice, and it came up, follow the white rabbit. And I kid you not, the moment that we rolled that, this man walks by wearing this yellow wig. Like Ronald McDonald. It was a proper yellow wig. And it couldn't have been more perfect. So I'm like, okay, we're following him. So we roll the dice, and it's a couple minutes on the clock, but we didn't have to go very far. He didn't take us very far. He literally buzzes, we're in Soho, but there's flats above a lot of the shops, and he buzzes this door, and somebody lets him in, and he goes through, and I just managed to catch the door with my foot. And so I was everybody, okay, come on, let's go. We're all going inside. We got to keep following this guy. The time on the clock is not up yet. And so he went up some stairs, so we're all going up these stairs, and we get to the landing where he's at. And he's knocking on this door, and we're all kind of, just below the landing on the stairs. And he doesn't know we're there yet. And then the door opens, and this is obviously a brothel. Right. There's this woman scantily dressed there, and she sees us straight away. And she's like, oh! And he then turns around, he's like, ah, shit, what's going on? And that's when I kind of just break into this little monologue. I said, look, we've been following you, we rolled the dice, we started out, and it's over here, and then we rolled the dice, and we got this number, and then, let us here, and there, and then you walked by, and you had the wig, and went over, and he's listening to all this. This is not, it's probably only a minute, but it was enough, and he literally, I kid you not, he looks at us, and he's looking at her, and he looks back at us, and he looks back at her, and he goes, I'm sorry, love, but I'm going with them. It was absolutely beautiful. Again, and what I found fascinating about that experience was one of our core human needs, and this is one of the reasons why I do these walks, one of our core human needs is variety, which is uncertainty. You know, we have plenty, if our core need of certainty is at like our core, it's one of the 7 core needs that Anthony Robbins and Chloe McDonald's talk about. And they suggest things like if certainty, which is one of those needs, is at your core, then it makes sense that you will need certain things to happen before other things can happen. And an example might be love, showing our love. You might need to feel certain about something. You might need to feel safe before you can show love to somebody. You know, so, you know, or you might need to be certain that, you know, you can pay your bills every month. Whatever it is, you know, we have certain things that we just need to feel safe with in regards. But there also is that uncertainty, that variety, and that's why I love these walks, because it gives us that variety. It starts to recalibrate the nervous system. I love them so much. Like all the stuff I do, synchronicity, and these synchronicity walks are some of my favorite things to explore. And I do it even on the road. I go hitchhiking. And I do weird things like I hold up signs, where typically if you're hitchhiking, say from London to Scotland, something like that, you hold up a sign that says Scotland. Because you want to get one long lift if you can. You know, if somebody's going to something like Manchester, that's a good ride too. So, but they know where you're going, so you're communicating with the people on the road. But I thought, you know what, fuck that. I don't want somebody picking me up going in any particular direction. I'm not going anywhere in particular. So I don't have to hold up a sign like that. I can just hold up a sign saying something like, are you awake or asleep right now? Obviously they're not asleep. You know, they're driving the car. But they don't know that if that may not be a dream, because we probably have these experiences where during sleep, certain parts of your brain are literally deactivated. Critical reasoning centers is one. Think about the bizarre dreams that you've had throughout your life, where really strange things are happening, and it's not until after you wake up where you're like, oh, that was a dream. But you didn't wake up within the dream. Like maybe you're having afternoon tea with the queen, you know, and she turns into a lizard, shapeshifts right in front of you. You should wake up to that, right? But you don't, because that part of your brain is switched off during sleep. And it just demonstrates how fragile our perception of reality can be, even in the waking state. So I'll hold up a sign like that. And I remember this one guy pulled it over. And he was like, where are you going? I was like, where are you going? He still let me in the car. Again, I didn't really have anywhere to go in particular. And I remember on this one occasion, I was hitchhiking from London to Scotland. And I got up somewhere north on the coast, on the east coast, near Nottingham, and it was an A road, but I wanted that A road because I wanted the coastal route. And this guy picks me up, he pulls over, he goes, where are you trying to go? And I can't remember where it was, but I said, somewhere north. And he goes, oh, let me take you to the main road, and you'll get lifts all day long. I was like, no, I kind of want the coastal road. He goes, you never get there. And I was like, that's okay, I'll take the next lift. And he went on. And literally within minutes, the next guy picks me up. And it's exactly what I wanted. We're driving, we exchange, you know, pleasantries or names. And then he's driving, I look at him and I say, do you ever experience anything strange? It's just me. Do you want to talk about politics when you got an opportunity to talk about multidimensional reality? And I said, have you ever experienced anything strange? He was like what? I don't know. Like UFOs or Bigfoot? And he just rattled off like 5 different things, like in a sentence, and I was just like switching on my voice recorder. It was like, you know, okay, go. And I just let him talk for the whole drive. We were together maybe half an hour, wound up staying with him for the night, met some of his kooky family the next day. He took me some of the hot spots where he experienced UFO activity. You know, this is what I'm talking about. You know, like if we could walk around wearing our awareness, wearing the things that are important to us on our bodies, it would just make it easier for people. And I know some of us are really good at that. You know, this is, I'm kind of really plain clothes. You know, nobody's going to really suss me out just by looking at this. I might wear a crystal every now and again. Like this guy here is a carved crystal, but he was kind of booking me out. I put him on earlier before the talk, and he was really tripping me out. So, but that's crystals. Some crystals, really, you can feel the energy of them. And, you know, depending on what you're doing, like if you're giving a talk, maybe you don't want a certain energy. I thought I wanted that, but obviously I don't. So, one more synchronicity story, then we're going to get into some of this other stuff. So I remember this one time in London, and this has got to be one of my favorites. This was early on when I was running these walks. And it just opened me up more than it already had, and it opened up other people that night like this great cosmic can opener. I mean, there were people just, you know, shaking their heads several times throughout the walk. So we rolled the dice at the very beginning to get our group number that we follow like a breadcrumb trail throughout the night. And we rolled the number 4. And so every time the number 4 comes up in our field of vision and bam, we're on it. We follow it. So we're going left, we're going right, we got deep in, you know, deep down the rabbit hole. And it came to this point to where we came to a bus stop, and it was the number 4 bus. And there's only going to be one number 4 bus route through London. So we thought, okay, this is synchronicity. So I said to him, if the number 4 bus comes within like, you know, a very short period of time, I think we should get on it. The moment I stopped saying that, the number 4 bus comes around the corner and it's rolling up, and you can see people getting nervous. They're like, I don't know where this bus goes. I don't know what this guy's going to do next. What's he going to have us do once we get on that bus? So I was on it. So I got on the bus, and pretty much everybody else, I'm pretty sure most people got on the bus. And then the moment we got on the bus and took our seats, it started to rain. And I mean, it was pouring with rain. So I thought, I love this, because we trusted our instincts, and we took that divinely inspired action, because the bus arrived in that synchronous moment. We're now dry. All right? And then I thought, what about parallel Todd? On a parallel Earth with his group, and they didn't get on the bus. You know, they took themselves too seriously, and then the trickster came and boom, we're all away. Okay, that's okay too. You can get dry, whatever. But we're on the bus, and I said to everybody, okay, now we're going to roll the dice again, and whatever we roll, that's how many stops we go. You can just hear it in people. Roll 1, roll 2, roll, you know, 1 or 2 stops. Like, no, roll it, and it's a 9. I was like, yes, 9 stops down the rabbit hole on a bus. I have no idea where this bus is going. And so during those 9 stops, we're talking. People are just, you know, freaking out. Whatever's happening is happening. And then we get to the 9th stop, and we're getting off the bus. And again, I kid you not, you don't have to orchestrate this. When you really follow your instincts and you trust this divine ordering, you know, nature of reality, it stopped raining the moment we were getting off the bus. It was, again, perfect. And people even that were like, what? And then we get off the bus and we're standing there, and suddenly, like, the group of people standing there and the bus is going away, and I look at the wall next to the sidewalk, and I ask them, everybody, who got away? And the sign read, there's a sign on the wall that's made plastic with that read, wait here for further instructions. And so we did. We waited. We didn't have to wait long. This taxi driver pulls up. His passenger gets out. And I look at him, he looks at me, and then I point to the wall, and he kind of chuckles. And I just explained, you know, we were there, and we were here rolling dice, and would you mind just randomly choosing a direction for us? We're not tourists. We don't want to go anywhere particular. We don't want to go to Buckingham Palace. We just want you to choose a random direction. And he was like, and we said thank you, and we went to the direction that he chose, and we rolled the dice to see how many minutes. And we're walking along, and within just a few minutes, we come to this block of flats that's on the same side of the road of us, and there was maybe four stories, so 4 levels. And on the very top of the penthouse, boom, boom, you know, party music going on, and I said to the group, I said, what do you think? Should we tempt fate? Should we gate crash this party? And as the words come out of my mouth, this guy shoots out of a pub across the road, comes across the pub, looks at us, he goes, what are you guys hanging around for? And I said, we were thinking about gate crashing this party. He goes, amazing, my mates just bet me I wouldn't gate crash that party. Again, think about the synchronicity, right? Throughout the whole night that we're experiencing so far, it's a high level of synchronicity, back-to-back synchronicities. And when this occurs, you know, this is where you go deeper. This isn't when you pull back, All right? This is where you really have to trust, okay, where can this go next? Where is this going to go next? Well, we're going in the building, so we went over there, we pushed every button. You know, to get in. Somebody let us in. So we get in, and we go all the way up the stairs to the top floor flat. Knock, 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 buzz, buzz, buzz. Guy opens the door. It was like classic, you know, sort of Jimmy Chong or something like that from, you know, the 70s movies. Opens it, and this whiff of smoke comes out from the door. He's got a reefer in his mouth. He's like, yeah. And it was like, we're rolling dice the whole night. It led us to your door. And it was like, come on in. Maybe. Another dimension of reality, because we trusted, trusted that inner guidance the whole night. And we went to the pub after that, and we sat there and we mused on all of it. You know, things like, what if we didn't get on the bus? What if we didn't trust that? What if we did get on the bus and we rolled the number 4? Would we have still found the party? You know, would we have wound up there through a series of other synchronicities? And I think 100% it's possible. And I think that because we have technology on this level that gives us that. It's our car sat nav. We program it, we take the wrong turn, what happens? It recalibrates. And it says, next right, and we're back on course. I think that's what synchronicity is meant to do. It's a divinely inspired phenomenon that can nudge us, can wake us up, can take us deeper down the rabbit hole. So I hope you can really see my passion around that, because I want you to then let that energy drive us into this next part of this talk, which is really, it's deep. Some of it can test your faith. You know, especially if you haven't had these kind of experiences yourself. Maybe these are experiences that you've read in books. Maybe these are experiences that you've maybe seen in films. This is my life. And this is my life because from a very young age, things happened that I couldn't quite explain at that age. And things just kept on happening. And I would just trust that it almost seemed like from a very young age, like something or someone was looking after me. I didn't have any relatives that died that I thought was looking after me. I just felt there was something else, something bigger. And I couldn't quite articulate it. You know, this is me articulating it as an adult. The experience I'm going to share first is a near-death experience. I keep pointing over here. I actually have note cards. I'll do my best to articulate the spoken word, the stories this way. But I do want to refer to my notes on occasion because, as they say, the written word is like the deepest form of thinking. And I want to go to that deeper level on occasion because when I'm trying to articulate the abstract, other dimensions of reality which are sometimes challenging to get our heads around, from just hearing it, let alone witnessing it firsthand. You might have read the stories of near-death experiencers, you might have had one yourself. But these things can be challenging to put into words, so I will use notes on occasion. So, my dad had a really weird ritual when I was growing up. He used to like to take us on the weekends to the municipal dump. And you really got to watch these patterns that get handed down to you through your ancestry. Because now with my son, every now and again, I forget to take bins out, and I have to go to the fucking rubbish tip, recycling tip, and I have to pack it in the car and off we go. So it's a weird pattern that I've been, it's been handed down to me, and it's bizarre. But anyhow, so he was a master builder, contractor, carpenter, really amazing builder. And he had this trailer that he would fill up with all the garbage and leftover pieces of wood and broken bricks, empty bags, after a job, and then on the weekend he needed to take it to this local landfill, which was owned by friends. And this landfill was an old fishery, and they had maybe a good 12 fish ponds. But they were all slowly being filled in. Probably a good, more than half of them were now filled in. But this place had its kind of magic to it. You come off this main road, get into a country lane, and then you come off onto this dirt road, which must have been a mile long. And he would always say, when we get off to that point, off the main road to that point, he'd say, all right, boys, it was me and 3 brothers, and I was the second to the youngest. And he'd go and sit in the back of the trailer with all the broken, shit, and then we just go over this dirt road, bumping. It was a lot of fun for us, but that was one of his ways of showing us a good time. And looking back, if you're shut down, if you find it difficult to communicate, to connect, you have to find your way to connect, and that was his, and I respect that. So we get into the landfill, and there was magical things about it. Walking around the old fishery, there was a zip wire, there were wild pigs. We almost got completely destroyed one day by a wild pig. Me and my brothers, we get into all sorts. He dumped the stuff, he'd talk with his friends, they maybe shoot guns, and we would just get lost in this place. And it was our little playground, during the weekend sometimes. So on this occasion, my youngest brother was probably 3, I was 5. My next older brother would have been 6, 6.5, and my older brother 8 years old. A couple of adults on site, including my father. And I remember wandering around one of the fish ponds, and I leaned over, and I was just looking at my reflection. And I was just absolutely captivated by my reflection. And I leaned over a little bit more. I was 5 years old, I lost my footing, and I fell in. And I started to sink because I wasn't a very good swimmer. So I started to sink. And from that child's mind, it's different from now. And what's interesting, just after this experience, which I'll finish off in a second, I started having lucid dreams at age 6. And I started having out-of-body experiences from age 6. But I didn't have a label for them back then, obviously. I was 6 years old. I didn't know the label lucid dream. I didn't know the label out-of-body experience. There were no popular books on the subjects back in the 1970s. And this was like 1975. So when I started having the lucid dreams, I think it was okay to have my mom explain that enough to me, to some degree, becoming aware within the dream. That was okay enough, I guess, for a 5-year-old. I knew something was different. It was when the out-of-body experiences started taking place. I would have these strange sensations, what now we would call vibrations, sounds that seemed to be coming from my ears but were coming from inner senses. Seeing my physical body lying in the bed and standing next to the bed looking at it. Trying to digest that as a 6-year-old. It's difficult, it's almost impossible. But this stuff happens more than you realize. And this is where some of the blurring of reality, which I really love to explore. We look at reality from the Christian lens or organized religions in general, and they talk of segmented reality. Like heaven and hell is a good segmented reality example. If our loved ones go to hell and we go to heaven, do we get a phone call every now and then from our loved ones in hell? Hey, how you doing? It's kind of hot down here, but how's the weather up there? They're segmented realities, communication between those levels. We don't hear about that in the Bible. We don't read about that. They're meant to be here forever, for eternity, whether it's up there or down there or whatever. So they're segmented realities. With these other experiences, these lucid dreams, these out-of-body experiences, you start to get the feeling that reality is very fluid, not segmented at all. It's a continuum of consciousness, and information flows effortlessly between those different levels, between those different dimensions. The physical world, the earth plane, the afterlife. So I didn't know how to articulate what was happening, but I knew something different was happening. So I gave it two labels as a child. For when I knew I was awake, or at least I thought I knew I was awake, wakey house. And when I thought I was asleep, and in this other dream or whatever, sleepy house. And there would be days where I would be genuinely confused. How could you not? So I would have these experiences where, let's say as an example, my father. My father was very abusive. He drank a lot, smoked a lot, and shouted a lot. And just to give you one high-level example of his insanity, one night he woke us up probably around 2 o'clock, 3 o'clock in the morning. We ranged in age probably from about 5 up to about 10 at that time, and we forgot to take the rubbish out. So he hauled us all out of bed at that time in the morning, took us out into the yard, into the garden, and whipped each one of us one by one with a rose twig. You know, it was madness, but that was him in a nutshell. So he was a very difficult man to approach in waking life. You never quite knew how it was going to be, so you had to choose your moments wisely. And I remember one time in what I refer to as sleepy house, so what I now label an out-of-body experience, and it was one of those nights that completely blew my head off as, like, at this point I think I was 7 years old. I will get back to the dump, I know you're excited about that, but just give you a bit more context. I woke up one night, I walked out of my room to go to the toilet, and I remember hearing my father shout. And this must have been in the middle of the night. He was just shouting, and I look out the window, and he's out back, and he's just shouting his head off. He must have been drinking, and I was thinking, oh, I better go tell Mom. And I walked to the bedroom, and I opened the door, and there's this weird light, in the room, and there are two people in the bed. And I could see my mother, and I could see my father. And my little head is trying to process this. Who's that in the yard, in the garden, yelling? It was my father. But I am now meeting him in what is my sleepy house, in his sleepy body. Again, you see how you can't do much better than this as a kid. But you do what you can. Again, when your own children, maybe you're already thinking back to when your own children have said weird things to you that they've experienced, or when they start seeing people that we label invisible people, maybe we don't take it serious enough. This stuff is more real than any of our doubts. This stuff is more real than most of science. This stuff is definitely more real than most of religion. There is truth, I think, in any philosophy. But when you have these direct experiences, that's what really starts to change things from a belief to something that you now know. So I'll just now rewind and we'll go back to age 5. I've now fallen in the water. And I'm going to reflect on this as I have been able to now, partly as an adult as well as that child. So I'm going to go back between the two. As an adult, I've had out-of-body experiences that I call my flashback experiences. So I come out of body sometimes, I have very ordinary experiences where I'm just walking around my physical house. I'm in the etheric version of my house and I can interact with that dimension. I might come out of my house, walk around the neighborhood. Those experiences, are pretty cool. So I just lost my train of thought. Where was I?
At the dump.
Falling in the bed.
You're going to take us back to the dump.
Okay. There was another nugget there that I was going for, but
You were between the two, adults and child.
Yes, thank you. So, as an adult, I would start to have these flashback-style OBEs of that event, and I would be taken back in time to that experience. So now I've been able to examine it from 2 different ages. I remember at age 5, when I fell in, and I was struggling to get back to the top of the water, and it was just impossible. I just wasn't a good swimmer, and I think I was already taking on water because I was panicking. And it didn't take very long from taking on, I think, the first gulp or so of water. I went from kind of frantic to a kind of calm. And this is where I then would have one of my flashbacks as an adult, and I could see this merging of these realities where I was floating down in this water, but at the same time, there was like this instant where I was now floating in another dimension of reality. I was floating in the etheric version of that pond. As a child, I would have never got that. I would have never understood that. In these flashbacks as an adult, I'm able to go into it a lot deeper, at higher level detail. And it was this perfect continuum that was just merging the physical with the non-physical. So as a child, I'm now, experiencing calm when I should be experiencing something else, the panic. And then there was like a light, and then I'm standing I shouldn't move on that fast, maybe I'll articulate as an adult. There was a light, and there were feelings, but I wasn't capable of processing those feelings as a child and what was happening in that moment. So as a child, things were blocked out. From my child mind, I was suddenly, moments later after that flash of light, I was standing dry, in dry clothes, on dry land, in a city that I didn't know. I had no idea what just happened, but I felt good. And I had no concern for what just happened. None. And there was this tree, this ornamental tree. And I loved climbing, so I climbed the tree, and I'm up in this tree. And then moments later, there are people underneath the tree, and they're like kind of shaking their fists at me. And then I hear my name called to me, higher up the tree. Todd! And I look up, and there's this curly-haired man higher up in the tree, sitting on a higher branch. And he's just like, "You're not meant to be here." And I suddenly in my mind, I looked out at the people. They didn't have pitchforks, but that's what I was kind of envisioning in my mind. I'm in their tree, and he's like, yes, you probably shouldn't be in their tree either. This is their sacred town tree. But when he said it again, "You're not meant to be here." And now I'm going to flash back. I'm going to go forward to explain this from my adult perspective when I started having out-of-body experiences with these flashbacks of that experience. I think they wanted me to really deeply understand this experience. And because I was having these out-of-body experiences anyway, as an adult too, then it just made it easy for me to process a lot more of what was happening. So before being in the town, the city, and the tree, still in the water, there was a flash of lights. And then there was this essence. There was this all-pervading feeling that was around me. And as a child, like I said, I wasn't able to process that very deeply at all. I felt calm. That was it. But there was something in the ether. There was an energy which was like a hug. And I felt loved. I felt deeply loved. I was immersed in an energy that was very familiar. And then there was this transition, and then standing on the dry land in another dimension of reality. And again, that transition was pretty seamless, even to my adult eyes out of body in this flashback. Completely seamless. There was no sense of like this jarring, leaving my physical body and then being in another dimension. Or even leaving the earth plane and being in this higher dimensional level. It was a true continuum of consciousness, a unified field of consciousness. like I said earlier, where information can just flow between these levels. Deja vu, precognitive dreams, synchronicity. All of this is signs of this continuous flow of energy from one dimension to the next. It just perfectly makes sense to me. So now from this adult perspective, I'm there, and I'm seeing the situation of this tree, and I now know because of my adult experiences, I am in another dimension of reality entirely. And that's where my younger self went. And this was what you could view as an afterlife environment, where we go after we die. And there isn't two, there are, I want to say hundreds, but it's more like countless. There's an explorer known as Robert Monroe. He's deceased now. He wrote a couple really interesting books on his experiences, and he called those afterlife environments the belief system territories. And they covered literally hundreds and thousands of various beliefs. Christian belief, whatever, it was there. People were there doing wish fulfillments. There were pre-life communities on this dimensional level. People training to come here. There are communities there that don't want to come here at all. They see it as like a prison plan. They say, oh my God, I don't want to go there. So you get like a mixture of communities. And some communities don't even know there's a yet denser level of reality called the earth plane. There is such a vast collection of communities, and all of these that I'm describing so far are human in orientation. If I had to put a finger on the number of souls that I think are in those higher dimensional levels, what some would call the astral planes, and this is just an estimate based on maybe now 18, 19 years of exploring this stuff, consciously out of body on a regular basis, talking with individuals on these next dimensions. Some of them you might call guides, which are in some cases advanced versions of your soul group. If I had to put a figure on, I would put it close to something like 80 billion individuals on those higher dimensional levels in these numerous communities, these very intentional communities. Now going back to my near-death experience as a child from the 5-year perspective. I'm in this tree. I'm not even concerned about what just happened to me. It's actually starting to fade. And then this curly-haired man, he said to me, I'm going to get you some help. Didn't know what he meant, didn't care what he meant. It just didn't matter. I was in my tree, I was dry, I was happy, and I had an interesting perspective, which seemed slightly beyond the perspective of a child. I now come back in as an adult through one of these flashback OBEs. And what I was witnessing was this expansive consciousness that we experience when we're in that state beyond the body. It seems as if the brain becomes some sort of limiter for consciousness, for us to have these experiences of physical. And I do the air quotes because, to me, this is just mathematics. That's all this is. This is just mathematics. This isn't physical as what we think it is. This is just math. To me, we are living in the one true reality of consciousness. We are in these spiritual realms, great thought forms that contain layer upon layer upon layer of continuous experiences. And that's just the human domain. We didn't have non-human domains that are adjacent to this. So getting back to the near-death experience, the curly-haired man behind the scenes, from the adult perspective, is he's literally nudging somebody to realize I'm in the water. I remember once driving in a truck in California. This was in the Rio Physical. And I'm coming down this mountain, and for weeks and weeks, I hadn't been wearing a seatbelt. And I got in the truck that night, I closed the truck door, and a very clear voice, as if it came from the back seat, said, "Push your seatbelt on." And I put my seatbelt on that night. Going down the mountain, a deer ran out in front of me, slammed on the brakes. I was a new driver, pretty inexperienced. That fishtailed the truck. I then let go of the brake, and the truck lurched straight off the side of the mountain. Took out a bunch of trees, going head over tail all the way down. That's another near-death experience for another time, but we're getting too far away from where I wanted to take you. So back to this near-death experience and seeing this from this adult perspective. He was nudging somebody to get me out of the water, because nobody knew I was in the water as such. And the reason I took you to the truck was to the voice that came to me, as clear as day, as a human voice. It was a nudge. It saved my life that night. Because if I would have gone off the side of the mountain, head, front over back of the truck, just tumbling, take out some big trees on the way, I'd have been dead. I'd have been thrown from the truck. I'd have been dead. We get these nudges throughout our lives. Put your hand up if you felt nudged. Look around you. Quickly look behind you. Look to your sides. Look in front of you. I would say that's easily half the room, if not more than half the room. So obviously you're all going to have very interesting stories of your own to share. So from this adult perspective, seeing what was happening, he was nudging somebody to get me out of the water. So as that was happening, there was this, from my field of vision as a child, there was something going on over here, like in the right to me, but wasn't really paying attention, or it was just a blur. As an adult, again, in this flashback would be, I wanted to examine what that was. And so when that part of the experience started to replay to me, I focused in on that, and it was like a fractal. I went into this light that was just taking place over here next to my head as a child. And there was this great fractal of my life that was unfolding in that light. And I literally saw flashes around through that fractal of things that would happen, that would definitely happen in my lifetime. It was like I had this cheat code where I was able to see parts of my own future. And what I found really fascinating about this is, again, from that child perspective, the trauma that was taking place, and now not a care in the world, that was being missed, but I was being shown that nonetheless from an adult perspective. But I also had a strong feeling what was going on within the child was there was some sort of, what do we call it? We might be sitting in a room absorbing information without our direct awareness. What's that word?
Premonition?
Can't think of the words. But it's like, we're just like a sponge, and we're just taking it all in anyway.
Assimilated?
I was assimilating information. And what was really fascinating, when I left home in particular, sorry, not even going that far, age 7, I remember standing on my front porch with my best friend. This was in Florida. We were standing on the front porch, and the sun was going down, and we were kind of like in this highway hypnosis, or at least I was. I was like in a hypnagogic state, watching the sun go down. And I just blurted out of nowhere, someday I'm going to move overseas. I'm going to marry, a woman overseas, and our firstborn child is going to be a girl. Just out of nowhere. And I'm almost certain that came from that flash and that information that I did absorb as a child. And these little bits would just come to me like that. Or I'd be on the road in my later years hitchhiking as a 20-year-old, 21-year-old. And I knew I could just trust my intuition in a big way. I actually remember having a deck of cards. They were my magic deck of cards. It was just an ordinary deck of 52 cards. And anytime I was in doubt about something, I would go to that deck, like my oracle deck. And I knew I could trust it. But ultimately, I knew I could trust myself. I knew I could trust my own inner guidance. The deck was just a tool for me to focus my own intuition. And on this one occasion, I remember, we'll come back to the near-death experience again. I really want to weave a lot of things into this tapestry. So I'm now 23 years old, so we're really going forward. And I'm hitchhiking in America, and I'm in New Mexico, the state of New Mexico. And hitchhiking on a local state highway, not a big motorway like we have here. Like in the U.S., we have big U.S. highways, but this was a state highway, so it was smaller. It was, 2 lanes each direction. And it was in the middle of the desert. The guy that dropped me off just kind of disappeared down this dirt lane, and I'm standing there as the sun's starting to go down, thinking, I'm not really prepared to be out in the middle of the desert tonight. I don't have the clothes for it. It's going to get cold. So I thought, I need to get a lift. And then this convoy of trucks came over the horizon from the west, going east. And as they got really close, the first few went by, I could see these were circus trucks. My inner child then started lighting up inside. I was like, I always wanted to join the circus. What little boy and girl didn't? Right? And these trucks are whizzing by, and I'm like, okay, get your manifestation hat on, boy, because you need to get a lift. And this isn't just any lift. This is a friggin' circus. So, thumbs up, all the trucks disappeared. And I was like, fuck! I was really quite angry that I didn't get a lift. And then one more truck comes over the horizon, and I was like, okay, you gotta get this guy to stop. So I was just visualizing the end result of seeing the guy pull over. I was like, yes, yes, yes. And hearing the guy's voice, meow, ah! And literally maybe 50 meters later, he pulls over. And I run into him, and I'm like, I hope he's not one of those dicks where you get close and then they pull away. I want to go back. And he literally pops open the door. I get into the truck, and he's like, "Are you looking for work?" And I was like, "I'm always looking for work because I never had any money in my pocket, but I was always taken care of. Mysteriously, always taken care of, just like what was about to happen." And he explained to me, "Okay, well, I've got this. I own about 3 different kiddie games at the circus, the carnival." And he said, "We're going to a place called Tyler, Texas. We're going to set up." He said, "The setup is grueling. You're going to hate it. But then the fun stuff, after we're set up and they open it up and the kids come in, the adults come in, and, he goes, I'm going to put you in charge of this game where it's this squared off area that the public have to stand behind, and then there's like a table and there's catapults. And then we hand them these rubber frogs, and you put a frog on the catapult, and you get them out, and you whack the catapult, and the frog flies, and there's this tub of water in the center of the stand with these lily pads, and you have to land the frog on a lily pad to win a prize. Very simple game. So he explained it to me. He said, I'll give you 25% of all the cash you take. And my 23-year-old mind was like, how much cash could that possibly be? Lots of people go to the circus. So first night we set up, and I think I made the guy maybe $100 that night. He said I could sleep in the back of the truck. I could shower on site at the, usually at the state fairgrounds we were setting up, so I could shower on site. Rub shoulders with the other carnies, maybe get a free meal here and there, and I could save the money. So $25 was a lot when you had nothing in your pocket. And free roof over your head with the truck that he let me sleep in. This went on for a few days, and I think by the 3rd night that we were in Tyler, Texas, I might have made something like $400. So $100 in my pocket. We broke down. That was also grueling work. Packed up the truck, went to the next town, rinse, repeat, or whatever it's called. So we set up again, and by that time, that second round, that second city, I was learning fast. And I learned how to work the crowd into like a frenzy. And I remember by the time we finished there, I had made him $2,000 in one night. $500 to my pocket, sleeping in the back of the truck. Suddenly, I was rich. All right? I had money in my pocket, and I remember sitting on the back of the truck, and this feeling came over me. You have to go. And I was like, you gotta be freaking crazy. I'm making good money. I'm making friends. That Carney chick, the red-haired Carney chick is cute. She's got the eyes for me. I've got the eyes for her. I'm going nowhere. But that voice, that knowing, that inner compass, I dare not dishonor it because of what it taught me up until that time. It never let me down. I only let myself down when I didn't follow that guidance. As much as I didn't want to go, I had to trust that it was the right thing for me to do. So I remember the following morning, one of the notes, so I just rewind, sitting on the back of the truck, but I thought, you know what? I need a sign. Beyond the inner compass, because this was just such a good setup. I needed another sign. So I got out my deck of cards. And I said to the universe, if I pull a number 9, I'll leave tomorrow. I knew the deck was stacked in my favor. There's only 4 9s and 52 cards. So I was confident. So I'm shuffling the deck, and then intuitively I'm just moving with it, pick a card for a fucking 9. I was like, what? There's my sign. I already had my sign. It's that inner guidance, but I felt, again, because of the setup, I needed to be sure. And this was my reassurance. This was my certainty. And so I said, fine, I'm going. And I thought to myself, where am I going? And I thought, I'm going overseas. I've got money now. I want to get out of here. I've been hitchhiking the U.S. for 3 years, Canada, Mexico. I want out of here. I want to go to Europe. Started in some English-speaking country. And so I told the manager, the guy that picked me up in the truck the next day, he was sad, I was bummed, but I had to go. And so I hit the road, went to Florida. I had my stepfather, I had to pay him some money, so I gave him some cash. I went to the travel agent and I said, I want to fly the 23rd of October, that was like just over 10 days away, and I want to go to England. And so this was 1993. Travel agent, she printed off my ticket. I got on the road. I made sure the flight was from New York. So I wanted to hitchhike from Florida to New York because I wanted to see my little brother in Jacksonville, Florida before I went off because I didn't know when I'd be back. I then wanted to hitchhike to Washington, D.C. to get my passport, and my 2 older brothers lived in D.C. And that was all on the way to New York. So I thought, I'll do all that. I did all that. Got to New York City, arrived to the terminal the night before, fall asleep in the airport. There was no craziness back in the airports in 1993. You could sleep wherever the hell you wanted. So I slept in the terminal. I had a 10 cent, a US 10 cent piece left out of all the cash. I prepaid my dad, my stepdad, gave him my passport, some other bits and pieces. I was broke again. Did I care? No. Because I knew by that time I could trust these unseen forces, whoever, whatever they were. I remember waking up the next morning in the terminal, started playing solitaire, which was one of the things I played while I was waiting for something to happen, and people started to walk in, and I had this strong feeling that I was going to meet somebody that day that was really important to me. Really important to me. And so I'm just playing solitaire, looking up every now and again, watching people, and then this redhead walks in with a brunette. And it wasn't their looks as such, I just knew. And so I had to look at him, I watched him for a little bit, finished the card game. They called us aboard, I got on board the plane. This was a 747. Holds just over 400 people over several decks. I sat down in the middle aisle. The brunette sat opposite me on this plane of 400 people across the aisle. The redhead sat directly behind me. That was a pretty powerful synchronicity. And of all the people that I spotted, it was them, and they were now sitting in close proximity. So again, I just knew to trust. But then I had a moment, just the next moment, where they came over the tannoy saying, we need somebody to get off the flight. We will upgrade you to first class on the next available flight, and we'll give you a $400 travel voucher. That was my life. I was pushing over old ladies getting to the front of that plane. No old ladies. It was just me. I got to the front of the plane within maybe 20 seconds, and the stewardess was like, "So we don't need a seat anymore, sir." I'm like, "What? There's nobody else here." But that's how it was. I don't know what happened. So I went to sit back down, and it wasn't until in this 5-hour flight the last half an hour, I started leaning over from the middle aisles, trying to get a look at the greenness of Ireland down below. And the brunette said to me, would you like to swap seats? So we swapped seats. And she said, what are you up to? And I said, I'm just been hitchhiking around America, going to hitchhike around Europe a little bit, starting with London, just see a bit of the UK. She said, last year I got back from traveling to Thailand, Australia, New Zealand, and I traveled a lot of my own, so I know what it's like. She goes, why don't you give me my number, and then, you can, look me up. And I was like, great, got my little black book, gave it to her. And she wrote down her name, her phone number, her address. It was North Harrow in London. Okay. Got off the flight, said goodbye. I went hitchhiking straight away. I took it a couple days to take myself, and then I went hitchhiking. 2 weeks later, I was in Bristol, and I was in the youth hostel. And I met this French girl my age, so 23 years old. And we got on really well, and she said, I live in London, why don't you, when you get back that way, why don't you give me a call? I said, great. I took out my black book. She opened it at the same page as the brunette. Wrote her details directly underneath the brunette's details. And the address was North Harrow, London. I was like, that must be a really big part of London. Like a borough or something. It's not. It's a small little village part of London, of Greater London. So I got back to London and I called the brunette. She invited me to stay with her. She was still living with her mom and dad, saving up for her own place. I was with them for a few weeks, and by the end of the second week, we were becoming a thing. And I remember one day we decided we wanted to go to the shopping center down the road, Brent Cross, something like that. And we were in the car, she was driving, her father came, opened my passenger door, and handed us some containers, plastic containers. He said, would you mind just going to the retail park around the corner, go into this building, drop these off to a client, they want some samples. And we're like, yeah, sure. We got to the retail park down the road. The brunette got out of the car, took the samples in to reception, came back out with the samples saying it was the wrong building. So we got back in the car, drove to the next building on the lot. She got out, took the samples in, came back with the samples, it was the wrong building. Third building on the lot, I said, give me the samples, I'll go in. I went in, and behind the reception desk was the French girl. I didn't know what to think. Am I supposed to be with one of these women? Am I supposed to be with both of them? My head was just swimming with the synchronicities alone that were happening. And I got back in the car, and the brunette was looking at me. She's like, what happened to them? I was like, what do you mean? She goes, look in the mirror. I looked in the mirror. I had kiss marks. This woman was French. Like, I don't know how many times, but there was like, kiss. And I was like, I had to explain the French girl. I showed her the black book, and then we kept getting stronger and stronger in our relationship. And eventually we got married, had 3 children together. Every now and again when we'd fight, you know what she'd go back to? Maybe you were meant to marry the French girl. We'll finish off that near-death experience as a child. Eventually, the nudge took place. But before somebody was pulling me out of the water as a child, I'm now in the water again. But I'm not in the physical water. I'm in the etheric, what I would now as an adult, the etheric version of that water. And I'm in the water looking at my physical body. I had no desire to go back into that life. None. My dad was a major asshole. There wasn't, there just was so much abuse at home. It just didn't seem like something that I wanted. Even as a 5-year-old, I was like, what I had just experienced, even though I couldn't explain it, the feelings that I was feeling in that moment before going back into my body. And this curly-haired man, he was real. He wasn't an aberration. He wasn't a ghost. He was tangible. Because our bodies our etheric bodies, our astral bodies, whatever they were, our spirit bodies were vibrating at the same frequency. We were as real as each other, and he literally in that moment, watching my own body in the water, hugged me. And it was a warmth. It was an all-encompassing love. He didn't need anything from me for him to love me. Nothing needed to happen such as me behave before he could show me affection. It was real. I did not want to go back into my body. But in a flash, I was back in my body and I was being hauled out of the water. I was probably in that water 5 minutes, maybe a little bit longer. It seems like easily half an hour on the other side. Easily. And then, like I said, a year later, or a few months actually, after my 6th birthday, I started having these lucid dreams, out-of-body experiences, and it was a confusing childhood. Up to about age 12 before these experiences stopped. But at age 7, I remember, I think it was 2nd grade in the United States in Florida, and the bell rang for recess, and I was sitting at my desk. All the other kids got up to go outside. And I stood up, and immediately it felt like this gravity pulled me back down again. Sat back down in my chair. I felt sleepy, just overwhelmed with like this sense of tiredness. And I laid my head down on the desk, and within probably less than a minute, I was standing next to my body, having an out-of-body experience. From what? I didn't do anything to induce that. There was no trauma to induce that. It was the effort of another being on another dimension that did that. And what I find really fascinating about some of my adult OBEs, sometimes days in advance, sometimes weeks in advance, I will feel this overwhelming energy around me. I know something big's about to happen. I know I'm about to have an out-of-body experience that's just going to blow my mind even further. Again, when we're dealing with this reality, which is a continuum, information flows, nudges can happen physically as well. Think about a film like the film Ghost. Think about the ghost on the train Ghost, where it's really, he's like full of self-hate. He walks up and down those train carriages just bashing everybody's newspapers, just full-on poltergeist. Has anybody ever experienced anything like that? Put your hands up nice and proud and high. Look around you. That's probably about 10 people in the room. 7, 8 people. These things are real. These things, again, are more real than our doubts, than our fears. Most of you will probably have these feelings, if not experiences. Let's just check that one. How many of you have had near-death? How many of you have had a near-death experience? Look around you again. How many of you have had a spontaneous out-of-body experience? Look around you. This stuff happens on a regular basis. So I want to tidy up this experience, this near-death experience, with these takeaways. In the out-of-body experience, especially as an adult, I experience sometimes not even out-of-body, 360-degree vision. I can zoom in and I can zoom out at will. Maybe this isn't, maybe this is just, I feel smarter. When I'm out of body, it's like the filter has been removed. And you come back from these experiences with this expanded sense of awareness. You just seem to know stuff. As I already explained once, you don't want to come back sometimes. One of my students that I taught how to have an OB I used to run these events at this place called the Tower. It was in London, in Blackheath, 7 stories tall, an old Victorian water tower, red brick. I'd give a talk on a Friday night, really deep talk, and then for the rest of the weekend I'm teaching people how to leave their bodies. And this one Russian pilot, ex-pilot showed up, commercial airline pilot, and he had an accident, plane crash when he was in Russia. The plane went down, almost everybody on board died. Him, his co-pilot, and a few other people survived. He was racked with guilt. They were trying to put him in jail because they thought it was pilot error. They couldn't find the black boxes. Eventually, they found the black boxes. He was exonerated, but he was still left with all that guilt. He shows up at my workshop. During the weekend, he didn't have any experiences. But there were several meditations we were doing some very heart-centered stuff where he was just full on crying during these experiences. This 60-year-old man crying his eyes out. Everybody went home. Weeks passed, and then I heard from him by email. And he said, it happens. I had my first experience. And he then proceeded to lay it on for me. He laid it out for me. He said, there was just a light. He was just practicing, and suddenly there was a light, and there were all these hands, hundreds of hands reaching towards him. He said all he felt like he had to do was reach out to any one of those hands, and something would pull him out, and it would take him somewhere. Each hand related to another dimension or whatever. That's how he felt. He reached up, a hand pulled him out. And it said it pulled him through all these layers of illusion, from the earth plane to the etheric, to the astral, the almost infinite subdomains of the astral planes, the higher astral planes, the transcendent levels of consciousness, the soul plane. He said he went through all these layers. And he came to this point where there was this clear demarcation point between the one dimension and another dimension via this kind of doorway, which was like, he said it was like a pseudo doorway, almost a portal. There was nothing solid about it, but you got the sense if you walked through there, you were going to yet another dimensional level, like it was a tunnel of light going to another, yet a higher, more subtle vibrational dimension. And he was already describing a very high plane of reality. He said, Todd, I could feel already around me, the love, the interconnected field of consciousness of love that was around me and working through me on the dimension I was standing in or I was in. He said, he told me in this email, he said, I've got children and I've never felt love like that, even for my own children. He then focused his thoughts on this doorway to the next dimension. He said, Todd, I knew in my heart that if I went through that next gate to that next dimension, I would not be coming back. And he said the moment he had that thought in his head, he said 2 beings that had pseudo-human form, but were more beings of light, he said, swept down from that higher dimensional level, stood at the doorway and said, it is not your time. And he said he tried to barter with them. He tried to negotiate with them. It was just like, you have work to do. And so he's writing all this down, and he's writing the last final bit of it, and it was really broken. It wasn't really broken writing because of his English, his Russian. He finished off by writing, I'm really sorry if the text in the writing is really bad. I can't stop crying. Years later, he opened a spiritual retreat center. And now he is touching lives in a huge way. He wasn't forced to return. He had no choice. His life was not finished. Same with a lot of near-death experiences when people, they clearly don't want to come back in most cases. When they feel that all-encompassing warmth of these higher realms, of these beings that meet with them sometimes in these luminous spaces, they don't want to come back. Their life on earth just seems like it doesn't make any more sense for them. It holds no more purpose. It's like, Scotty beamed me up and I'm not going back. But like I said, in most every case, there's no coercion, there's no force. Through the out-of-body experience, I have no choice. I am still tethered to the physical body. A lot of people fear having out-of-body experiences, think, well, what if I can't come back? That's the easy bit. Getting out is usually the hard bit. Coming back is almost effortless. Your energy body, your spirit body feels expansive, unrestricted, and limitless. You get this kind of feeling, how am I going to fit back in my body? How am I going to fit back in my body? That's how expansive we are. It's almost like we're literally being condensed like a zip file into these bodies, but that's not technically what's actually happening anyway. Even the label out-of-body experience is a bit of a misnomer. Anyway, that's that. Andy, how much time have we got?
Half an hour.
Oh, crap. Okay, Andy, can we have those videos?
Sure. If you click right on that remote, which is up there next to you.
There's a really wonderful meme that I love that I saw on Facebook once. I have it here. What if you, after you die, you wake up holding a bomb, being surrounded by aliens, and they ask you if it works? They're clearly taking some DMT. You know, if you've ever had somebody give you DMT, and as soon as you come back from your trip, you're like, did it work? Did it work? What did you experience? What did you see? That's what they're referring to. But you know, in this case, clearly somebody's just had a human incarnation, and they're just returning. Did it work? Yes, I spent this whole lifetime in this human body. And that's what I get from it. He's now sharing with his mates. A couple years ago, I had this mind spot in London called the Pandora Spa. And we had this virtual reality here. People would come and put on these goggles, and we had this thing called a pit demonstration. I'm going to show that to you in a minute. So basically, you put on the goggles, and there would be like this, suddenly this room with 4 walls, and you're standing on a ledge which is maybe just as wide as your feet, and it's about 20 meters deep. And there's a plank that goes across, and it doesn't even look very real. But with these virtual reality headset on, that's now your reality. Out of every 10 people that would try this pit demonstration, virtual reality experience, about 8 of them would not walk across the plank. The plank was fixed, the floor, in every direction. They wouldn't walk. Because in the body of that headset, their perception of reality became so incredibly fragile. The pit looked real, their feelings about it were real, they maybe took a couple steps like, no, not doing it. They just walked into our building. They knew they were in a room, and there was no real pit, they wouldn't do it.
Click again to start.
Oh!
Go back to it. Yes.
Sorry about that. Standing on terra firma. He won't do it. He wouldn't do it.
Is there someone to catch me if I fall? Nah.
So you can now see what I mean, how fragile your awareness becomes, all right? So this is now, these guys are on VR treadmills, and they got these belts on, they can go in any direction. Listen to this guy. Here's what he said. He said, "Get this off of me." This is all of us at some point or another. It's like, get me off this planet, Scotty. One to beam up now. You know, that's how real this stuff has become. Now you think about, you know, the technology we have now. At some point, it's going to be so advanced that we are literally going to be able to create a simulation that is as real as the Earth. I don't know if I want to be part of that, but who's to say we're not already? But anyway, this next one, I just find hilarious. But yeah, you'll get the flavor. This guy's nuts at himself. So at the very end, he's like, you remember it's holy shit. Okay, that wasn't real. That's cool, that's cool. So when Andy put up the information for this talk, you might recall, some of you might remember reading about one of my false awakenings. But I wanted to share an experience with you. So I'm in this cabin in Alaska. I'm staying at this cabin, and the owner of the cabin makes it clear you have to keep a bonfire going near the front door. Because if you don't, the grizzly bears will come up, get really curious about the cabin, so you have to keep the bonfire going. So I'm there, and I remember one day, I'm throwing wood on the fire, and this big brown bear, a female brown bear, walks by, stands up, sniffs me, sniffs the cabin, sees the fire, keeps walking. And I got really curious, so I walked away from the safety of the fire. And, that bear must have been, maybe a couple hundred meters away by that time, so it was safe. So I walked, maybe 20 meters from the fire, because I wanted to see where she was going. And I'm watching her off in the distance, and then I hear this thudding behind me. And I look behind, oh, fuck! And it's this bigger male bear running towards me. And I'm like, literally froze. And then I realized that if I don't unfreeze myself, I'm going to die. So I have to run. I start running back towards the fire with this bear on my heels like this. And I literally, meters from the fire, I tripped and fell to the ground. And I'm just waiting for it. I'm waiting for this blow of death. And literally, I'm lying down and I feel this, and I'm alive. And I wake up on my sofa. I'm lying there on my sofa now in full paralysis, full waking, sleep paralysis. Can't move a muscle. Total darkness, but I know where I am. I'm like, holy shit, I was taking a nap earlier, and now I know I can't move. And it's like there was this glitch in the dream matrix, and that fucking grizzly bear was there for about 10 minutes while I'm in this paralysis, just literally like these two competing realities, the physical and the non-physical. This grizzly bear couldn't see it, couldn't smell it, but I could hear it. And it could obviously, the dream character or this aspect of the dream was still going, still trying to rip me to shreds. It was terrifying. Absolutely terrifying. Now, can you imagine? Eventually, I was able to break the paralysis and then was able to go on to another OBE. But what I found really fascinating about that experience is, what if that was real? What if that was in the real world that we are aware of here? And I tripped and that bear caught up with me and mauled me to death. What would have happened? Other than this guy. On the next dimension up, other than this guy. I now be my spirit body, not yet knowing I was dead, experienced in this horrific, traumatic experience, because this is now going to be an instant death. And because this is a continuum of consciousness, I died seamlessly. And I'm now here on this next dimension up. Even though the bear's not there, I'm still like this guy at the very end. And all the astral residents are looking at me like, what's wrong with this guy? And then eventually, I realized I died, and I'm like, it's cool. And then my guides walk up to me and they're like, did it work? Did it work? My human reincarnation, did it work? I absolutely love sharing these experiences. And there's a few that I wasn't able to relate tonight, but the main one that I was able to relate, and I want to tie up, was the NDE in childhood, but one thing I want to tie up really quickly is the hitchhiking. So married, the brunette, 3 children, eventually got divorced 17 years later. The same location where I had this terrifying encounter with this grizzly bear in a false awakening of a dream. I took some magic mushrooms. I took a heroic dose. I must have taken about almost 5 grams, I guess. And mushrooms were new to me at the time, so they had quite an effect. Maybe 3-4 hours deep in this experience, really powerful things that are for another talk entirely. But near the end of that experience, I actually had an out-of-body experience. And I was transported during this experience, and I was suddenly standing on the back of a truck. And I looked down, and I could see my 23-year-old self sitting on the back of the truck, at the carnival, after a big night with the money and feeling like this is a good setup, I'm going to stay here a while, and hearing a voice, it's time to go. That was me. Decades later, that was me in the out-of-body state, standing on the back of the truck, insisting to my 23-year-old self that it's time to go. It was an eye-opening experience, to say the least. Sometimes we are being nudged by ourselves from the future. But what's influencing what? The past influencing the future influencing the past? When you're outside your body in these other dimensions, time doesn't operate like it does here. There's so much more to share, but I want to leave it there. Andy, do we have any time for a Q&A?
You do, yeah, got 15 minutes.
Any questions?
What happens with Ed?
That was the brunette's best friend. She was off limits. Any other questions?
You know this paralysis that you can have when you're sleeping? Like, I've always had the association that it's quite a negative experience that you're meant to get out of when you sleep. You want to how to identify what's going on as you find yourself in that.
So it's called sleep paralysis. It's Googled 400,000 times a month, more than the word God. So it concerns a lot of people. And when you have a sleep paralysis episode that which is accompanied by hallucinations, it's terrifying. You can't move. Your worst fears are sometimes being manifest in the etheric spaces around you, and you can't move. It can be terrifying. We get other phenomena from that stage called the old hag syndrome, where we feel like somebody is sitting on our chest, incubus, succubus. All these kind of stories stem from sleep paralysis. Sleep paralysis is both physical and a non-physical phenomenon. And when you've learned to engage with it, with curiosity instead of fear, it becomes a launch pad to the next dimensions. But in the beginning, it can be terrifying. For anybody who has these experiences and you want to more easily break these experiences, if you don't want to use them as a launch pad, typically the only thing you have available to you is your eyes and your breathing. Everything else is paralyzed. So the trick is you do very erratic breathing, and usually within 30 seconds you can break the state. But what I would suggest, when you're in this state, have some courage, really develop that virtue fully, and ask a question like, show me the truth of this experience. And reality will evolve right before your eyes. Usually the dark, shadowy figures will evolve, or maybe you'll just literally, the paralysis will break and you will peel away from your body like Velcro, and you will start to begin a deeper journey before you die. Anybody else?
So, sorry, just to add to that, out of all the experiences you've said, out of all the experiences you mentioned, the sleep paralysis is what I have. And before breaking it, what I would do is go up through the walls of the building, through the roof, and then I start this a flying expedition, which does then become terrifying. And then what I understand is that I use my will to break it. So what you just said about the fear makes sense. I don't know, I'm just saying that's an experience. What advice have you got?
The next time that you're on one of these flying expeditions, you sound exactly like my uncle, who he was in World War II, age 19, on the front lines, and they were attacked several times in the middle of the night by German soldiers while they were sleeping. Some of his mates were murdered in the middle of the night. So he was terrified of sleep and developed a sleep issue in quick time. He was removed from the front line, taken to a base hospital where he had sinking experiences, sinking down to the bed. Didn't know what was happening. Eventually he was able to come out and stand up next to his body and still didn't know what was happening. Tried to turn on light switches, couldn't flick on a light switch because it was a physical light switch with his non-physical hands. And what you described is very similar to him. He would then, for almost the rest of his life, almost every day, he would get sleep paralysis, and before he could go to sleep, he would have to get up, move around in a non-physical dimension, before he could go back into the body and then fall asleep. Almost every night for the next 60 years. And then when he found out for the first time that I was consciously inducing these experiences, he was like, "What the fuck wrong with you, boy?" Because for him it was terrifying. Because it came on unexpectedly. It came on, spontaneously. And he had no information from anyone to help guide him through this. For me, I've, as an adult, read plenty of books. I now teach this stuff. What I would do in your shoes, when you go on one of these flying expeditions, I would make a command: higher self now. Take me to the astral planes now. Take me to my guides now. Make a very firm intention, command, followed up with now. Be brave.
Yeah, it takes a lot of courage.
It does take a hell of a lot of courage, but the alternative is the price you're paying, which is a price paid through fear. The alternative is you're going to release yourself from this fear, because during one of these flying episodes and you say something profound like higher self now, and you get catapulted into a more consensus reality space where there will be other human beings who are in the afterlife that you can communicate with and bring back information, maybe verify the experience somehow. It will start to give you a profound peace of mind that not only are you more than your physical body, not only do you have an essence in you that survives death, but an essence that precedes birth. An essence that probably wasn't even born in this reality, but is a being from another star system who got very super curious about this human stuff. And in particular, this dimension where we learn the five senses, we have an overlay from birth of our extra senses, our extrasensory abilities, that eventually, through different experiences, start to come back online and guide us back out of every layer of the illusion, back to who we truly are again. And then we do it again with full confidence, full awareness that we're doing it again on this prison planet, as we sometimes call it. In our darkest, dimmest moments, because this is far from a prison planet. This is PhD quality learning. PhD quality. I've been out of body to some higher vibrational worlds in other star systems where they have a seamless awareness, even while awake on their home worlds, of the higher planes from their home worlds. They can communicate all day long with beings that are in the non-physical dimensions. It's intentional communities where absolute cooperation, exploration of feelings on a collective level, harmony, it's beautiful. But this is getting in deep. This is getting in balls deep. And this is PhD quality. And when you leave this dimension after hundreds of journeys back into it, and you graduate this, other systems want to headhunt you. And I'm not kidding. Not even slightly.
Can I just ask you, I work with shamanic consciousness.
I wonder if you're talking about the same thing as I feel.
Exactly.
Which is going into non-ordinary reality, which you step into.
Many roads lead to Rome.
Yeah, is it the same space that you're talking about?
Same space.
Yes.
We just have different labels.
Yeah.
And where sometimes a shaman might be very surprised when somebody comes to do ayahuasca with them, and they can sense that this person has abilities they don't seem like they should have, being in one of these white bodies, if you want to call it that way. Just as an example. So, I want to just leave a couple things. Andy, how many minutes?
You've got 5 minutes.
A couple years ago, I used to have real chronic pain in this shoulder. And it was from 3 years of full-on hitchhiking, always carrying my backpack on one shoulder instead of both shoulders, and equalizing the weights. I got this chronic pain. When I started having these out-of-body adventures as an adult, on one occasion I came out of my body, I was in my etheric body looking back at my physical, no, I was in probably my astral body, looking back at my etheric body. And I could see that this energy was unbalanced here. And I knew that related to my physical injury, my chronic pain. I worked with the energy from my out-of-body perspective into the etheric energy, smoothed it all out, came back into my body. That chronic pain was gone. Disappeared within, it wasn't even there when I woke back in my body, it was gone. I came out of the body once on the astral planes, wandering around. It was an astral city. Belief system territories. People believe there's, they're an afterlife community that's very, very much looks like Earth. Cities that can sometimes look like Earth, and there's reason for that. It's to slowly reintegrate people back into life on those higher dimensions. Sometimes you need something that looks very familiar. On this one dimension, I was walking through, it looked like a normal city you could find on Earth. This was an Earth counterpart city. And I walked past a hair emporium. This was maybe 10 years ago. I had big old head of hair here in physical reality, lots of curls. And I walked in, and the guy said, "Please sit down." And I sat down, and in my astral body, I was as real physically as he was to me and I was to him. He started rubbing his fingers through my head, and he started to read my physical body, not my astral body, my physical body, which was back on Earth. And he said, "You have lots of, you hit your scalp a lot." I said, "Yes." He goes, "You need this particular oil." And he gave me the name, and I'd never heard this name before. I came back to my body, I went to the health food shop, and I said, the best way I could describe it, the woman said, "Oh, you mean jojoba oil?" And I was like, "Ah, yeah, that must be." And it is the most perfectly matched oil to our natural sebum on our scalp. And I started using it, and within less than a week, the itchiness was gone. I went to this one-dimensional level repeatedly, met this family that lived on this level a handful of times. On this one occasion, the woman, she said to me, she was just reading me, just as we were just talking, she was reading my energy in my physical body, my etheric body, and she said, "Do you get lots of stomach problems after you eat in the morning on your dimension?" I said, "Yes, actually." She said, "It's animal juice." I was like, "What?" "It's animal juice. You drink animal juice in the morning?" I said, "Cow juice, yes. Juice, milk." And she says, "You should stop drinking this milk." And I stopped drinking milk, and within less than a few weeks, never had that issue again. Gone. I went to bed last night, hoping I'd have no BE in the morning before I came here, and I did, and I'm very happy that I did. It pleased me. I woke up in this very astral-type city, and there were these kind of bicycles, and I thought I wanted to ride one of these, and they looked like they were available. I wasn't stealing it. And so I'm riding this, and I was thinking to myself, I feel like I'm supposed to consciously ride this, like manipulate movements with my mind. And I started doing this, and then I bumped into a woman, an inhabitant of that space, a resident of that space, ran over her foot. And I said, oh, I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. I'm as awake there as I am right here, with my body sleeping back in my bed on earth. I'm so sorry, I'm so sorry. It's okay. Her belly started to grow. She said, your wife is pregnant. I was like, wait, what? What? Whose is it? It's an alien. Your wife is pregnant. And her belly started to grow. I had already known from a few months ago that she was pregnant. But she knew the moment she touched me that my wife was pregnant with our next child. And she told me the sex of the baby, which I already know, because I've already had a couple out-of-body experiences with this individual. And on the beach in ceremony, taking mushrooms, about 2 months ago, I was on the beach and I had 2 staffs that I had made myself. One was the masculine, one was the feminine. 3 hours in the mushrooms, nothing was happening. I was just, sorry, nothing was happening. Everything was happening. But I wasn't thinking about my wife. I wasn't thinking about, the child inside of her. But suddenly, in this moment, kneeling on the beach, I suddenly started thinking about the child inside of her belly, and I asked, are you the same individual that came to me this other time? And it was a particular sex. And the moment I asked that question, this big wind came in physical reality, blew over one of the staffs. I won't tell you sex. Because part of me is still like, But I've had 3 experiences, and my other children, this will be my 5th. I met all of them before they came here. Every one of them. And I'm sure some of you did too. How many of you met children before they came into this body? Look around you. This stuff is real. Thank you.
That is fantastic stuff. We'll give you one more.
The information where unknown forces strike the edge of ecology.